welcome back to 10cast. My name is Johnny Brooks, and today I'm really honoured to be joined by the one and only football legend, Colin Hendry.
Afternoon, Johnny.
Good afternoon. Thank you for coming along.
Pleasure.
It's good to have you here.
Yeah, as I said earlier on, it's a bit different having to drive into Aberdeen rather than driving past Aberdeen. But no, it's good to join you.
Yes, we're really looking forward to it. You know, we're here for our event tonight, which yourself and the audience are all wondering what's going to happen. We like to keep it a bit of a surprise.
I'm confused, mate. I really am confused because I hadn't got a clue. Although you've tried to explain it to me twice, once on the telephone and once since I've got here, I'm still... Well, I've got an idea of it now, but it'll still be interesting.
It'll be fun.
That's the word, fun.
And we like to keep people guessing.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. But the purpose of this really is for people that either couldn't make it tonight or people that physically can't get here, you know, because you've got fans all around the world, as you know, even my dad, people like that are obviously big fans of yours, but we know people all around the world from playing the FIFA games and so on, talk about the Scotland
When I did have hair.
And, you know, I just think you've got what I would describe as an iconic career. It's massive. So honestly, it's a privilege to speak with you. Yeah. And I'm baffled as to where to start, but perhaps if we go back to near the beginning, how did you get into football?
Well, I come from 50 miles along the road, a little place called Keith, on the Whiskey Trail. Population, 4,000 or 5,000 people. And I was playing for the junior side of Keith, which is Isle of Vale. And then I was playing for Keith itself, but the second team. So it was a Keith youth team. And then as I got older, towards my 16th birthday, I managed to get a debut for Keith in the Highland League. So the sports science back in the day, when I was at school, was playing on a Saturday morning for the school, Isle of Vale on a Saturday afternoon, and then the Keith youth team on a Sunday afternoon. So I had 3 games in 36 hours, Johnny, right? So there's your sports science back in the day. But it did me no harm whatsoever. It really did. And I just loved it. You know, I mean, I was a hard-working teenager, had a paper boy round, did a bit of milk, jumping on the milk float as well if they were needed. I was a green final lad. The green finals that used to come out for Aberdeen on a Saturday night. So I was a grafter, and then I ended up, as I got a wee bit older, I was at Annan's in the middle of Mid Street, where I used to deliver the gas bottles on the butcher's bike, which is like, that in itself was a difficult task. I used to do that on a Saturday afternoon, and sometimes nip down to Keith to Kynoch Park and have a look over the wall off the bike and see the game, watch the game for 10, 15 minutes. So I was really into my football, but I was a grafter as well, you know, and the grafting side of it really came from my dad. My dad was a postman, he was a driving instructor, he was a community counsellor, he had a sweetie shop, come confectioners, come fruiterers. He got up at 5 a.m, started work at 6 and didn't really finish till 10 at night. And when you're looking at that, watching that every day, you've got to get up and be at it, sort of thing. You know? You've got to show willing as well as.
I couldn't agree more. I think, you know, our dads are, you know, mums are amazing. They're something different.
Yeah.
But your dad almost sets the bar by which you feel like either you failed or you haven't.
Yeah,
and when you see your dad work so hard, you'll never settle for him working harder than you.
It'll never be good enough because you watch your old man all the time and you're thinking, right, and then again, and you're thinking, wow, you know. So it's a tough ask, but it certainly sets you off on the path of a journey where hopefully it's a good journey, you know. Yeah,
that's right. You kind of, well, I was going to say lead by example, and it just made me laugh because even just on the way to the studio, I sort of thought, I'll go behind you, I'll follow you. And I'm thinking, you're going, Johnny, where are we going?
I didn't have a clue.
It's that captain thing,
you're
you know?
Following me, I know.
I thought we'll walk out of Hampton or something, you know? And it's that kind of mentality. I would love to know, you know, your nickname famously is Braveheart. Yeah. Why Braveheart, and why do you think you have this leader's mentality? What makes the difference?
Well, the Braveheart thing came around because it was, I think it was 95 that the movie came out. And it was in and around that time that we were doing well with Scotland, qualifying for the Euros in 96 and qualifying the World Cup in 98. So it was pretty pivotal round about that time when the movie came out, and I had the long hair, the long mullet, the blonde mullet, which I don't have anymore, but I've taken steps because I've had a hair transplant, so I've taken steps to reincarnate that mullet, not to the same degree,
Sure.
but certainly so that I can have a bit of head of hair. And I think that just worked in because I had the longish hair and I was a bit swashbuckling and all that.
Yeah.
And at the same time, as a defender, I would put I would virtually put my neck on the line. And that art, unfortunately, is now really gone from the game of football, because I was discussing this earlier on to someone in football, and I said that, you don't have to be able to do that anymore because the laws have changed, the laws have relaxed, and
It's a lot softer.
It's and I got asked a question this week as well. I was doing a bit of TV work, and I said, would you be able to play in the modern game? And I'm like, doddle. An absolute doddle to play in today's game, because you don't have to be physical.
Right.
But the 2 or 3 things you've got to be able to play is A, play the game of football, which I was able to, but B, you've got to be pretty quick and strong as well. It's a bit speed,
right?
and if you've got a stature about you as well, as, because even at my height, nearly 6'2", I'm regarded as just the run of the mill size, Johnny. So it's a bit different now than when it was when I played.
And I think that's something I find quite interesting, because when you describe it as getting softer, I think it's a bit of a commentary on everything that's happening nowadays. Society in general is getting softer. And I think about kind of what we were just saying about our dads. There's a phrase I heard that really sticks with me about it, which is strong men, or let's say strong people, because women can certainly be strong parents as well and strong role models. Strong people create easy times create weak people, and weak people create hard times, and it's this kind of cycle.
It's a circle, yeah.
I think that we're about to hit a time where my generation certainly have had it a bit too easy.
Too easy, yeah.
We're a
get
bit
that.
soft.
I get that.
And I think work ethic's dying out a wee bit. You know, it's not to say that there's no one with it, because I'm lucky to.
Do you think? I mean, here's me asking you a question, Johnny. Do you think the work ethic type thing is relaxed? Is it got? And people of maybe your generation would consider a working day maybe being over, I don't know, maybe a 12 or a 14 or a 16-hour period, but in bits, rather than from 9 in the morning to 5 at night. And it was like back in that was it. That was your working day. You concentrated. You didn't look at your mobile phone. You didn't take messages. You didn't do anything like that. You concentrated in your work. And now it's changed, I think, isn't it?
I think that's exactly right. And I think the reason is social media.
Yeah.
Everything now is online.
The internet.
Yes.
The internet.
Because you can run a business online. I mean, I'm not one of these people, but I know people who somehow can make a living off their phone without, it doesn't matter where in the world they are.
Yeah.
They could be in their bed, they could be in Portugal, they could be on a plane.
I need to be one of them persons.
Yeah, I'd like to be.
But they're clever, aren't they?
Yes, but I think it's that, they're maybe working in chunks throughout the day, as you say.
Yeah.
Morning, noon,
That's
night.
it.
They don't have the same work-life balance, but they also don't have the same level of constant pressure or clock in, clock out.
Yeah.
But by the same token, I think a lot of people my age are quite quick to, that's 5 o'clock, I'm done now. And I think we've maybe lost that edge of I want to outwork you.
Yeah.
I've kind of felt this for a little while, and it scares me. And I think it's because of instant gratification.
Yeah.
When we're on TikTok, Instagram, everything's right now, short attention span, quick.
It is.
And it's one of the reasons I like podcasting is we're trying to keep long form conversations going, so we can talk for an hour and someone will listen all the way through and feel like they know you.
Right.
We're not just putting out a 15-second soundbite that either makes you sound stupid or makes you sound controversial.
It's concentrated, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's concentrated. So, because I understand you, as you explained to me prior to this, and it's going to be interesting. It's changed. It has changed. And is it the Snowflake Society or whatever, or woke or whatever? It's all these different words that's come into the vocabulary, isn't it? Yeah, all these different words have come out, and it's like, but they've all got a validation.
Yeah.
It is validated, if you will.
It's true. And, one other thing I wanted to ask you about, because I like to think of role models in a very special light. It's something that means a lot to me. I look back to your career, and I think, for me, the most iconic bit, and I must admit, I didn't watch it live. I was probably 1 year old,
Right.
but I've watched it back as a teenager and as an adult. When you led out Scotland against Brazil
Yep.
in the World Cup,
Yeah.
you know, coming from that young lad from Keith who's
Crazy.
watching over the wall,
Absolutely mental.
what the is that like?
Listen, to try and explain it is extremely difficult because that's exactly the tack that I take when I'm talking to people and they say, listen, a loon fae Keith actually captained Scotland in the opening game of a World Cup finals against the holders, Brazil and France. And when I go back, even when I go back to Keith now and go down my local and a couple of pints deep, and the lads next to me are maybe 2 or 3 pints deep, and they're like, I can't believe that you walked in Paris in 1998 and you led our country. And it's a pinch me time. It is really one of them, because when you cast your mind back and you look at it and you think, it's crazy, man. It's absolutely crazy. But such an honour. Mm-hmm. So, but you know, the greatest honour I've ever had. I didn't play for my country at any level until at full international level. I did my first cap, I think it was in '93.
Were you 27 at that point?
Yes, 27 years of age against Estonia. So even at 27, I still managed to accumulate 51 caps, which was, I'm thinking if I'd had my first cap at 23, I might have had 100 or whatever.
Sure.
But I'm not greedy. I'm not greedy. I'm absolutely delighted and so honoured to have had 51 caps and captained Scotland many times. It's just such an honour.
And I've read a few funny quotes and stories about that game in particular.
Yeah.
But for me, especially coming from this kind of FIFA generation, we grew up playing it on the Xbox, and I got into the game before I got into the sport in a way.
Right.
I found a fascination for the players, particularly the Brazilians, Ronaldinho, etc. And then you go, whoa, this is cool. And that got me then into football, going to Aberdeen, going to wherever, and playing against Ronaldo Nazario,
Yeah.
you know, especially as a defender, it's almost the worst nightmare at that point. Maybe the best player in the world?
He's regarded as the best player in the world at that moment in time.
What was that like?
And well, again, you're out there preparing for the opening game of the World Cup, and the pressures as an individual is on me. But that said, I'd already come up against a Thierry Henry or a Dennis Bergkamp or an Alan Shearer or the Italians, loads of different players that were all classed as world-class strikers.
Who was the toughest to actually play against?
The toughest would have been Romario, but that was in a friendly. I played against him in a friendly because he was like a small trajectory, turning space,
very quick,
and ridiculous. Aguero esque, Suarez-esque, that type. And that was the ones that gave me the biggest problems. The bigger ones, the Ronaldos or the Les Ferdinands or the Alan Shearers or they were my cup of tea.
Yeah.
They were the one, the Mark Hughes, yeah. And generally, and I do use this word loosely. Generally, they didn't run away. They couldn't run away from me.
Yeah.
Because if I was reading it properly,
yeah, you couldn't.
And it was and it was physical as well as, and I always had, as long as I always had the first marker on them, then they weren't going to beat me, sort of thing. But Ronaldo did have a different gear to go into when I played against him. I think he cut in the right-hand side over to his left peg, stopped one past Jim Leighton, his offside post, and during the game. And that was probably the only thing he did in the game, if I recall.
Right.
And when you look back, and I actually watched the game back, the full 90 minutes, with my mum during COVID, the first time ever since '98. And we watched it because A, there was nothing to do, and B, the television stations were rerunning all the different sports events, and it was a World Cup in '98, and I think, well, I'm sure we'll come to this, Euro '96, that was in there as well as, but just thinking and looking back, you're thinking, incredible stuff, and it was great. It was just such an honour for me, but so honoured for the family as well, and it's a proud moment, extremely proud.
And what would you say, there was stories about advice you'd been given before that game, like funny things. What was the funniest memorable moment, either from that World Cup or just from your career?
Well, it was Craig Brown. Craig came away with this, and there is a sweary word in here. But
That's all right.
Craig had, we were preparing for the opening game, and the good thing between the SFA and Craig and ourselves was that we wore the kilt to the 3 games. So we Brazil, Norway and Morocco, in Paris, in Bordeaux and in St Etienne. And when we walked out prior to the game against Brazil in Paris, Craig said to us, he said, listen, go down and acknowledge the Brazil support and then go and say hello to the Tartan Army. And as you're walking down towards the Brazil, there's like a haze. I don't know if they would have been able to have a cigarette or whatever at that time, and there was a haze above the fans, and you get the samba beat and the gold. And of course, we did all that and acknowledge them. We go up towards the Tartan Army, and the Scottish lasses have got the buckfast in the air. But it was good to see the family, seeing the family and everything else, seeing the kids, seeing my late wife Denise's parents. They were there with Kyle and Reagan at the time. We only had the two kids, and my mum and dad were sat a bit further up. So we did all that. We did all that enjoyment. That was really relaxed and enjoying. But you still had the one eye. You still want to think, the game.
Yeah.
But as soon as you got out the kilt, as soon as you got out of that, you were in game mode.
Yeah.
You switch over, you flick over pretty quick.
The focus shifts.
Straight away. And we were walking out prior to the game. And of course I was captain, and Jim Leighton was behind me, and then Tommy Boyd was behind Jim. And we're walking out, and Craig walks past with Alec Miller, and he says, "Skipper, you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm good." And he said, "Right, come on, come on, we need a good start." He says, but hold." He turns around. He said, "Just have a look around. Just have a quick look around." So I'm looking around, and I can see Dunga, the captain, coming out. Then Taffarel, the goalkeeper, Roberto Carlos, then Bebeto, then Rivaldo, then Ronaldo.
It's some team.
And I'm thinking. I said, "Craig, what is it?" He said, "Have you seen their eyes?" I said, "No." He says, "They're themselves." And I'm like, he's just came out with that. The world champions are themselves against Scotland. No chance. Not a chance. But it was a quote of all quotes, to be fair. And listen, we did okay. We did okay. We did all right in the game. In true Scottish fashion, we get beat. But we get beat by a corner kick.
Yeah.
And we get beat by a most ridiculous of own goals, which generally and normally wasn't something that we would succumb to.
Sure.
We practiced hard, we organised ourselves, and even if Brazil had maybe 80-20% possession and kept the ball for 10, 12, 14, 16 passes, and one of them lads that I just mentioned decided to stick one in the top Jim's left-hand corner, then you'd go, that's why they're world champions, Mm-hmm. But no, we concede a corner kick.
Yeah, you can create luck, can't you?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think we were all right, on the day. If it'd been a draw, nobody.
Yeah, the narrative would have been different.
Nobody would have ever held that against us, because overall the general in play, we were okay. Mm-hmm. We were all right, but again, we come away with it a point, and then it's doubly hard after that, because then you've got to certainly win the next game.
Yeah, it's an uphill
and
battle.
then the next game after that you can't lose. So you can only really lose one out of the 3 games, and if you lose the first one, you're on the ropes.
And this is a bit of a change of pace, but
Yep.
You mentioned your late wife Denise.
Yeah.
Now, we kind of spoke off camera about some of the work you are doing now, you know, and actually I will say, one of the things I really admire, even when we spoke on the phone, it made me laugh, made me feel completely inferior, is that you still play now. You're still active as anything now. You're still fit and healthy and well, which is ace, you know. Really good to see. When you were talking about what you're doing now towards mental health, I thought, wow, that's just the kind of cherry on the cake as far as my respect for what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
And, you mentioned Denise, and I think it's important that I would like to know why she is relevant to this now. And also, I think there are people out there that either think they might know the story or there's misconceptions.
Yeah.
So I would like to hear it from you if you're comfortable sharing. You know?
Well, she's firmly involved with everything because of the loss that we've suffered, and she was the most important part of the family, if I'm being honest.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my children have been, you know, they miss the fact that she was such a kiddie person. She really, children was just, so I've now got 5 grandchildren, and you know, I've said to my kids now, if your mum was alive, that she would never be off the phone and she'd be never away from your door, because she'd be with them all the time. But it was all relevant, and the history of Denise, for the people that don't know, Denise had cosmetic surgery back in 2001. She underwent an operation, surgical operation called liposuction. The operation went wrong. That left her really clinging for her life. The surgeon had punctured her bowel several times. Ended up in ICU, then intensive care, then on life support. She did come through that. She came through to probably about 90% of that. But then later on down the line, over the years, she had to have several subsequent operations because of that. And she lost her life in 2009. So the cosmetic surgery industry at that time, and I still think now as well, has to be better looked after. I know the laws and the rules and everything else has changed a little, but people shouldn't really be having to lose their life for the sake of a cosmetic surgery operation.
I think, and I don't want to say something that's offensive or going to get us sued, but I actually really have a bone to pick with that industry. You know, I think kind of on the same point as what we were saying about social media, I think there's a huge, almost pandemic now of particularly women who feel that by comparison they never feel adequate.
We're in a society where it's easier to attack that than diffuse it. And although there are people out there, and a lot of people, because of the situation, the society we're in as well as, think it, but they don't want to say it because they don't want to get into trouble for it.
Yeah.
And this is the other part of society we're in at the moment, where you think, crikey, that's a disgrace. But you're saying that in your head, but you're thinking,
You can't say it out
I'll
loud.
just leave it. Because it's less hassle. It's less hassle. I mean, I made a reference, which I'm sure we're going to come to in a minute, Euro 96, Gascoigne, the goal. I made a reference to that the other day, and I'd said, I saved his career by what happened. Oh, goodness me. I was in jest. I'm saying it in jest, and I've been stripped all over the press now about, is he really thinking that? I'm like, no, I'm not really thinking that. I'm just saying it in jest. But you've got to watch what you say.
I think,
Johnny, you really have got to think sometimes and work out at times as well, as depending on what you're going to get yourself involved in, where that's going to be aired.
Sure.
You know?
I think that's a very valid point, and it's one of the reasons this feels important to me, is that we're not censoring people. We're not, kind of trying to control what you say. But by the same token, it's maybe a chance for you to say what you really mean. Because one thing I feel is lost when everything's quick and short, like it is now with social media.
Yeah, you said.
Everything. You also lose the ability to really have a nuanced conversation where you can actually explain what you meant.
Yeah.
And we're so quick to take sound bites and snippets from people, run off with it to the press.
It's wrong.
And
It's
cancel
wrong.
culture.
Because that 5, 10, 15 seconds, and you don't cover the whole interview, that's wrong.
Yeah.
You can trip somebody up very easily, and they can be tripped up very easily for the sake of that. And that's more or less just what I'd spoken about a minute ago in relation to Gaz's goal in '96, where I said it in a way of me taking the piss out of myself. Really? Yeah, you know what I'm saying? But then they've turned it around to make it look as he was serious. And I'm like, what? Really? But then the society we're in at this minute in time, at the moment, that's where we are.
And I think exactly on that point, with the cosmetic industry, or the cosmetic surgery industry in particular, we were actually having this conversation with some of the staff here the other day, because a lot of them are young women who they all aspire to look great, and actually they do look great. That's the sad thing is
The natural beauty. Denise had the operation because she wasn't a gym goer. She was 5 foot. She had a big boobs, which she was naturally born with. She liked her cigarette. She liked her vodka and Coke, but she'd fell into that thought process of, I probably need to get rid of this a wee bit. And I said, you know what? I love you just the way you are. I don't want it. But at the same time, when somebody gets a thought and an idea, you think, well, you've a right because it's your body, you know. But you've still got things to consider as well as. Never thought nothing of it. Never thought anything of it, Johnny, that she would lose her life on the back of that.
No, I bet.
You know,
it's one of those that is very tricky because on one hand you don't always know what to say, because if you agree with them, the conversation become, are you saying you think I'm fat? And you're like, no,
there you go.
That's not what I'm saying. I think you're beautiful.
Exactly that. I did say, listen, we don't need it. We don't need it. You don't need it. But she was adamant. And yeah, the history. If you could change the history, if you could turn back the clock, mate.
Yeah,
that's the way.
And I think that's a good segue to mention the fact that we can't change history, you know, sadly, but we can use it to inform what we do now, and we can use it to, you know,
I mean,
I've
been talking to different organisations and different companies, and I go through it pretty much in chapter and verse, quite a bit more vivid than what I've done today, and the issues that you subsequently have after that, and all the different things that surrounds it, and a lot of different parts and bits of information that I've not mentioned today. But so I've done that on the basis that people can maybe understand what's happened in my life, and my family's life, and our lives, and maybe somewhere within that as well as they might go, right, that's happened. We'll maybe think twice about this, maybe think twice about that. And I'm not saying it's a warning shot. All I'm saying is that that's what happened to us. That's what happened to us, and this is, you know,
it can happen.
And it can happen. It can happen. And then you've got, I mean, within that, without a career that I've got, you've got the work, as we'd spoken about our fathers at the beginning of the podcast, the work ethic, and we've got loads of different things that combine and are the ingredients of being a success.
And do you think that there's any one attribute you can attribute, that's a funny way of putting that. Do you think there's any one quality you can attribute to whether or not someone's going to be successful? Is there any one thing you could pinpoint as, if you have that, you're more likely to be successful?
I would say, I think, in general life, you've got to have a skill set of some sort. That's without a shadow of a doubt. The second thing is you can work at your skill set. And because of that, the third thing is you work hard.
Yeah.
If you work hard enough, you'll get the breaks. You will get the breaks, and you will get... I was at Dundee for 4 years prior to me going to Blackburn Rovers. And within 3 weeks, I was in a cup final at Wembley. You know, and scoring a winning goal in a cup final at Wembley. Yeah. And people in Dundee didn't have a clue who I was for 4 years of them walking up and doing the hill turn in Dundee. And as soon as I got to Lancashire, within 3 weeks, I couldn't go into a public place without somebody want a picture, or well, not so much pictures, because you didn't have telephones with cameras on them days.
Was it more autographs and stuff like that?
A signature, or right, and it so. The work for me, the work ethic side of it, but then we're going back to our dad's.
Sure.
Is the one thing I would say. But of course, you need a skill set of some sort in relation to what you're doing, you know.
I have an answer to that question as well, which I think is very relevant to you. And I didn't actually plan it on being relevant, but I was just thinking about it and thought, do you know what? I say this not as a way to surprise you with it, because it's actually, I come from a place of respect in saying this. My biggest thing I would say will make someone either successful or not is the ability to come back from zero. Whether that's in a football game, you know, if you're losing, if you're
Johnny,
behind.
I hit a low spot, mate. I hit a low spot. Denise died, and life after that wasn't great. It wasn't good. I mean, the worst thing of it all was the fact that I'd lost Denise. The children had lost their mother. You know, that has always be the biggest thing that will ever we'll never learn from it, but it'll be the biggest thing that's ever happened to us in a negative way. And things didn't progress. Things didn't get better after that, you know. And you know, you end up making mistakes. You're corrected for making the mistakes, or you're getting warned, or you're getting punished for making the mistakes. But then what you've got to do is try and you strip yourself down. You look at things and you think, do you keep doing what you're doing, or do you strip yourself back, get right back to the bare bones and work at it again and go back to possibly what you were doing when you were 16, 17, 18, when you thought it was at the beginning of the process that had just come through the life of a footballer.
Yeah, the hunger.
The hunger, the application, the fact that you're going to have to work hard, that's not going to happen overnight. So you've got to, having done it before, certainly helps you the second time.
Yeah.
But the second time, you're not as fit, because when you're 40 odds or 45, you're certainly not as fit when you were 17, 18, 19. Sure. But you can still apply yourself. And
mentally, the attitude.
That's the big thing, and be strong. You've got the strength's got to come from within yourself as well as. But with the hits that you've taken, or the knocks that you've taken, you remember them and you put them to good use, and you say, right, let's go again. And I've had to do that.
I think, actually, even in business, it's so pertinent as well, because, you know, when I said that to you, I was also perhaps speaking from my own experience, you know, in that when we started or tried to start several years prior, my dad was basically the one that put the money in to help me get started. And it wasn't, you know, don't come from a wealthy family. It was his pension, basically. Right. This was right around COVID. In fact, I think just before COVID.
Right.
And I could have told people this privately, but never on a podcast. We put the money in, got an office, tried to build a studio, everything that we're doing now, but different place, different people, different time. It just didn't work, didn't get it right, didn't know what I didn't know, and basically lost.
You've learned a lot from that in order to go again and rediscover yourself. And
I think actually part of it is at that point being on zero, i.e., it feels worse than zero because I've lost my dad's money, and that actually, I've said this to people privately when they're having low moments, that if that had been my own, I'd have gone, business is not for me, count it as a loss. Because it was his, I was like, I'm not letting that go.
You felt responsible.
Yeah.
And that's,
And that kind of, I think once you realise you can go to zero, pick back up, start back over and do it, you'll never quite fear it in the same way that someone who's never been there.
Yeah, I get it.
You know, and when I look at your story, one of the things people talk about a lot, but for better or for worse, you know, I've got my own thoughts on the media and the way they portray people, more negative than positive. When it comes to the financial side with yourself, you know, there's been a lot of talk about gambling. Yeah. And I think that's something I would like to hear from you about, because I say this not in judgment. Yeah. I've been at zero. Yeah. I've made poor decisions, and thankfully I'm now okay. Yeah, good. But in the same vein, you know, how was that for you? What actually happened, and how did you get through it?
I was looking after Denise, and I was never a gambler really, but I'd fell in via a certain way, and I was Denise's carer. So in and around that time, I was maybe spending a couple hours having a sleep at night. Then I'd be getting up during the night, tending to Denise. Denise, through her issues and her frailties and everything, she did an ileostomy. She needed that tending to. But I was drinking as well. I was drinking, and gambling and drinking as a combination don't go hand in hand. Sure. If I'm being honest. But I ended up bankrupt the year after Denise died. But that wasn't the reason I ended up bankrupt. It was because I had bad advice through my financial advisor and various things, which is in the background as well as. There's a lot going on in the background of that at this minute in time, but I can't say too much about that at this minute in time, because I'm not alone in relation to being in that situation. So there's a lot going on. But it's not, listen, it's difficult to break that cycle. It really, really is. And I have broken it. And, you know, I've been out of that for a long, long time now. But you've got to, whilst you're going through it, you just it's a
dark
it's a downward spiral.
How bad did it get?
Well, it was when depending on if I'd had a drink looking after Denise, it was one of them where I'm thinking, you know, do you sleep? Do you go back? Do you keep alert? Have you got to wait for the next thing to happen? And it wasn't easy, and it's not easy. But I've came out of it. I've came out of it, Johnny, and it's the biggest loss of everything was the fact that we lost Denise. You know, that was the point where that'll never ever change for the sake of the family and the kids and that. You know, you know.
Do you think that gambling is a common problem or more common problem among sports, you know, athletes than we realise?
I think it's in there. I do think it's in there. But I mean, I think if gambling shouldn't really be involved with advertising within sport for me, because it's there anyway, you know. And I think the internet, going back to the internet, makes it far more easier for everybody to especially when in that situation. You know, if they've had that drink too much and they think, well, I'll just put a bet on and see if I can. And I'm doing it my last fiver, and then I'll just put this on and just if I can get that, then. But it's all, you know.
This is a weird analogy, actually, but it's kind of full circle. And I didn't even think I would say this. I just had a light bulb go off while you were describing that. But earlier on, I mentioned playing FIFA, and that being the thing that got me into football. On FIFA, you can buy these packs, you know, that have players in them, real life players that you can then use in the game.
Right.
And they're not worth any real value in the real world, but you have to spend real life money on them.
Okay.
Now, I've never talked about this in a business sense, but I have a real issue with EA, who make FIFA, essentially selling a gambling product. Now, it's not a gambling product, so I'm not trying to make allegations, but to me, it's the moral equivalent, because kids are going on there with their pocket money to try and get messy, and there's a chance that you get something worth nothing.
Right.
And there's no way to get the money back out once it's in. So they're buying these points and these packs to try and get Ronaldo or Messi, and they might get.
So in a similar way, it's educating the younger ones as well.
It's training them to gamble. I think.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to get sued, but what I would say is in Belgium, for example, they've outlawed this.
Right.
You know, mechanic of these games.
Right.
It's called microtransactions, purchasing through the game. They've outlawed that, and I think that for me was where I know I've got an addictive personality, because when I was 13, 14, any pocket money I had, straight on FIFA.
Yeah.
And it took me years to stop that habit, but now I see young kids doing it even younger than I was on loads of games, not just them. And we're conditioning young people to do that.
It's a society we're in, though, isn't it? You know, when I was a kid, and the monies I earned from delivering newspapers or working for Annans and delivering the gas bottles, I used to buy a heavy metal album. Heavy metal was my bag, you know. And between the music and the footy, you know, I'd listen to music when I was falling asleep because I was tired from the footy. And then I'd get up and put the music on and get myself going for the footy on the back of the heavy metal music. So it was a good cycle that I had, you know. But yeah, it's a society we're in as well as, you know, and there is that interpretation in relation to where does that stop?
Yeah, that's
where does that stop?
Where's the line?
Yeah.
And you mentioned heavy metal. Now I've got to ask this because it's a nice change of tone.
Right.
You're a big Iron Maiden fan. Yeah. You've got, I think, the Iron Maiden jacket on just now.
Yeah. I got this one. We were in, I think we were in Frankfurt. We were in Cologne. Might have been Cologne.
Very cool.
Slavia. No, it's in Prague. It was in Prague.
Yeah.
It was in Prague.
What's your link with Iron Maiden?
Well, Steve Harris, the bassist, good pal of mine. Known him for a few years now, and he loves his football. He's a massive West Ham fan. And the son George plays in a band called the Ravenage, or the Ravenage, or I don't know how the lads want me to pronounce it, but anyway, the Ravenage. And he's in the band, and I know both bands, great group of people. But Steve loves his football, and he likes his 90 minutes. He likes to play, even at the age of, I think Steve is now 67, or just gone recently. And he's organised the games in England when they were touring, and guest players would get a chance to play. Right. And I got offered, I'm like, this is like dream come true for me. You know, and I know people would like, yeah, but for me to play footy with you would be the dream for them to come true, sort of thing.
It's a win-win.
So it's a win-win, but I'm like, and then I go and see the concert maybe the day after or whatever, depending where I was. And it was the beginning of last year. I got a phone call. Call, can you come and play a few games for Iron Maiden, and they're doing a European tour? I said, yeah. I said, I'll play in Manchester or Glasgow or London. I said, you can do it. I said, oh, all right, but and what about Stockholm and Prague and Krakow and Frankfurt and, have I said Frankfurt, Munich, Barcelona? I'm like, oh, hold on a minute. I said, yeah. I said, and that's what I ended up doing last year. And I was even at, there's a few different ones, Bologna, as well as, it was just like, I was like a kid in a sweet shop. You know, really, I mean, an avid fan, AC/DC, Iron Maiden, Scorpions, UFO, Black Sabbath, Ozzy Osbourne, Saxon, Tigers, all these groups when I was a kid. And like 40 years later, I'm playing in the footy team with one of them. It's surreal. It's really surreal. And then you go to the concert, you backstage, you go have a bit of food, see the guys, they go on stage. It's just a different level of fame. It's a different level of fame completely. I mean, I know people do still know me, even though maybe I look a wee bit different, but phenomenal. Something else. It really, and the excitement and the feeling, and yeah. And it's difficult to explain. Really difficult. Really difficult to explain.
I think it was Rio Ferdinand said, if you could bottle up that feeling and sell it, you'd be.
You'd be very, very rich. Very, very rich, because that's partly because you're a fan of the group and what they're doing, and it's the music that you know, and also the fact that you pay loads of money to be involved in that. But you forget maybe about the paying the loads of money. It's just that feeling that you want.
Yeah,
it's that situation that you want.
Sure. And you've just given me a perfect segue over to this. For those that can't be there tonight, there's a story that you're going to tell as part of our game, which for legal reasons we have to call Would You Lie to Me?
Right.
Now, your story is similarly about a rock star, a different level of fame. Why don't you tell that story?
So can I tell the story?
Yes. And at home, don't tell us whether or not it's true, so that people at home can guess whether or not this is true.
Oh, right, okay. Right, okay. I've got to remember what was on, right, okay, yeah. So we were in, where were we? We were in America, and we had a couple of games to play prior to the Euros in 96, not the World Cup 98, Euros 96. And we had one specific rock star that joined us for a game of football in the training. And then he said to the manager, Craig Brown, he said, listen, do you want to come and watch us play a concert? And half the lads said yes, half the lads said no. And it was only Madison Square Gardens in New York.
Wow, okay.
And you're like, right, okay, who actually doesn't want to go to Madison Square Gardens? Just to go there is fine. Never mind go and see a concert. Can I mention the gentleman's name?
Yeah, of course.
Rod Stewart. And so, Scotland fan. And we ended up getting down there, Madison Square. We're a bit late for the concert, and we ended up on stage with him. He just released a song called We're Having a Party, and he was on with the encore, and the next thing they're like, right, lads, get on stage. And we're on stage, and there's all these footies dropping from the sky, and we're kicking them everywhere, and it's like surreal. Unbelievable. So you can believe that or not. I'm not sure if it's 100%. But
now, I'd like to finish off with a couple of quick-fire questions.
Yeah, go on then, mate.
So I'm going to ask you these, and you've got, say, 3 seconds to answer.
Oh, right. Cool.
Best player you ever played against?
Thierry Henry.
A rival that you would sign to your own team if you had to?
Oh, a rival to sign for Zinedine Zidane.
Okay, yeah. Right.
Yeah. Best
manager?
Craig Brown. But that from international, domestic's different.
Okay. Who's the domestic answer?
Domestic, I'd say Don Mackay.
Why?
He was the one that nurtured me and then he came back and re-signed me, and that really did kick off my career when he re-signed me.
Favourite goal?
My favourite goal would be, oh goodness, that's a hard one. I scored in the 3-3 for Man City against Manchester United. I did my Gaza-esque over Neil Webb, played a 1-2 with Niall Quinn, stuck it past Jim Leighton. That made us go up 3-1. Then ran past the long side down at Main Road. The other one would have been the Full Members Cup 1987. We beat Charlton 1-0. I started as a striker. Ian Miller crossed the ball. I was at just on the edge of the box, half volley. Bob Boulder's top left-hand corner, stuck it in there. Scotsman scoring a winning goal in the cup final at Wembley.
Yeah, that's up
There
there.
isn't many. There's not many of us, I should say. Probably one of them too.
What's your proudest achievement from your career if you had to pick one?
And England's probably winning the Premiership and Scotland's winning the treble with Rangers. But to the world, it's got to be walking out in the World Cup in 1998, captaining Scotland.
What's your favourite goal celebration?
Well, I can't say it was a goal celebration, but what I did do is, prior to the games at Blackburn Rovers, the fans, for some reason, used to sing this song before the game, just to get the crowd going. They used to sing, Colin, show us your arse. And I'm like, so when that came about, I ended up dropping my shorts to show my slips on underneath, sort of thing. But I did drop the full Monty. I did the full Monty the night we'd won, or the night after we'd won the Premiership at Ewood. And I've got that picture, actually. It's not for the faint-hearted, but it is from the side, so you don't actually see all the jewels, the crown jewels, as I say.
Who was the dirtiest player you ever played against?
Against a player called Billy Whitehurst. He played for Oxford United, Sheffield United, and a couple of other teams as well as. And he was the one that really, really... And then around that time, you had the Wimbledon boys as well, Vinnie Jones and Alan Cork, and they had Dennis Wise. They had a few, and the game from then to now changed. It's changed completely.
Favourite teammate?
My favourite teammate of all the teammates, probably wee Kev Gallagher, little Kev. And we don't see a lot of each other now, but we certainly spent a lot of time together at Blackburn Rovers and then playing for Scotland as well, with roomies as well as. And
what are you excited about from now to the future, away from football? Just, as Colin Hendry, what are you excited about?
About keeping fit and keeping getting my 90 minutes every weekend if I can. I won't have it this weekend because I'm doing a lot of work, but I love playing. I'm 50, whatever I am now. But I do love playing, and I like keeping fit and healthy. But there is a balance, I do like a Guinness, I do like a pint, I do like keeping busy and keeping fit, and it's there's a lot of things I think I regret, and there's a lot of things that I can't change. And I think you've got to get to a sort of a happy medium in your head and in your life where you think, right, that can't be changed, but you can make this better. And that's, I do think a lot, especially when I drive a lot. I'm up and down to see Mum and Keith quite a bit because she's good. She's in good health-ish, but she still needs looking after 2-3 times a month. So it's, but yeah, no, I've got plenty of things to keep me busy with.
And if you could change one thing that people think about Colin Hendry, what's something they don't know that you wish they knew? Or if you could
I've not written a book, Johnny. I've not written a book. And I think if I was to write a book, my life would be a lot different, because a lot of people, in relation to what they think has happened and, and what has actually happened, isn't exactly. But I look towards a family, and I protect my family, I protect my friends, I'm not really protecting myself. That's what I'm not doing. But I would, if I was to write a book, then it would probably clear the air on a lot of different things.
I hope you do it one day.
Well, I've started it a few times, but I've not continued it. So you never know. You never know. Might get to a point in time where I might just, right, okay, I need to tell the world exactly what happened.
Yeah.
And that might happen.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure,
it's been a pleasure.
Pleasure. Top man.
and thank you for watching. This is Tencast.